protection and cover up? Does it feel like real love yet? Did I pledge my allegiance for the purpose of progress to a priest or a prophet, playing God in the process? And was I chasing convenience in a wave of disaster, where the captain's a captor and I'm a puppet to master? Worthless for the curtain torn to take control of this ship. A nail of shame, a broken fame to write redemption scripts. A truthless gun, a dying son to turn the tables we flipped. Turn the tables we flipped. Paint the beauty we split. 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 Na 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 na.
We're committed to sticks and stones. What's the vision if it's true to a lesson? I don't know. We're committed to sticks and stones. I'm decided but I'm trying so hard, so it goes.
Worthless for the curtain torn to take control of this ship. A nail of shame, a broken thing to write redemption scripts. A truthless gun, a dying son to turn the tables we flipped. Turn the tables we flipped. Paint the beauty we split. 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 Turn the tables we flipped. Paint the beauty we split. Write redemption scripts. Paint the beauty we split. Take control of this ship. Paint the beauty we split. Turn the tables we flipped. Paint the beauty we split. Na 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 na. Show me a man, an honest mission. I'm willing to hold beyond suspicion. Show me the race, I'll run the distance. Longing to give and taste forgiveness. Dying to live a pure religion. Settle the rush to chase a mission. Open my eyes and soul to listen. Listen.
Killers and Well, good morning, everyone. That was way better than I was expecting. So, today's a really unique day, and let me tell you why. We got a text message as a worship team and as a brother about 7 o'clock last night, and I'm just here to tell you that Emily last night tested positive for COVID. And she's doing all right. She's just feeling a little under the weather, nothing crazy. Like, she's not super concerning that way. But obviously, that changes what we can do with our head pastor and what we can do as a worship team with no drummer. And so we had to change some things up. And everything's good. But I just want to guys let you know we try to be as transparent as possible and let you know where things are at. He says hi to everyone, and he wishes he could be here. And he's actually more stressed out about the fact that he's not here instead of the fact that he's potentially going to get sick. So that kind of tells you where his mind's at, which is all good. This first song that we're going to do actually couldn't have come at a better time. It's been a really, really, really hard couple weeks for me and my wife, and just a lot of things going on. And this song that we're about to sing, and you can stand and worship if you want. You can just listen if you want and jump into the next song after if you desire that. But this song's about things that go wrong in your lives, and crazy bad things can happen. But you can't doubt that God's got it, and you can't doubt that He's real, and that the miracles that happen in this world are from Him. I look around and see a lot of miracles. A lot of people I know that have gone through a whole lot of stuff. Me very much included. So if you'd like to stand, you can. If you want to sit and listen, your call. Brand new song. We're going to be doing this a lot because I'm the worship leader with her and I make a lot of decisions. So we're going to do it a lot. But thank you guys for being here. It's going to be a little bit more chill. Obviously, we got a video of Aaron speaking, so it's not like you're not going to learn anything today. So feel free to start singing when you want. I've lived stories that you proved your faithfulness, and I've seen miracles my mind can't comprehend. There's beauty in what I can't understand. Jesus, it's you. Jesus, it's you. And I believe you're the wonder-working God. You're the wonder-working God. All the miracles I've seen, too good to not believe. You're the wonder-working God, and you heal because you love. Oh, the miracles we see, you're too good to not believe. Too good to not believe. Too good to not believe. And I can't resurrect a man with my own hands. Just the mention of your name can raise the dead. So all the glory to the only one who can. Jesus, it's you. Jesus, it's you. And I believe the wonder-working God, the wonder-working God. All the miracles I've seen, too good to not believe. You're the wonder-working God, and you heal because you love. All the miracles we've seen, you're too good to not believe. Too good to not believe. Too good to not believe. After everything I've seen, you're too good to not seen cancer disappear. I've seen broken bodies healed. Don't you tell me he can't do it. Don't you tell me he can't do it. I've seen real life resurrection. I've seen mental health restored. Don't you tell me he can't do it. Don't you tell me he can't do it. And I've seen families reunited. And I've seen prodigals return. Don't you tell me he can't do it. Don't you tell me he can't do it. And I've seen troubled souls delivered. And I've seen addicts finally free. Don't you tell me he can't do it. Don't you tell me he can't do it. We've seen cities in revival and salvation flood the streets. Don't you tell me he can't do it. Don't you tell me he can't do it. We'll see glory fill the nations that the world has never seen. Don't you tell me he can't do it, 'cause I know that he can, and I believe you're the wonder-working God. You're the wonder-working God. All the miracles I've seen, you're too good to not believe. You're the wonder-working God, and you heal because you love. All the miracles I see, it's too good to not believe.
Too good to not believe. Too good to not believe.
When all I see is the battle, you see my victory. When all I see is the mountain, you see a mountain move. And as I walk through the shadow, your love surrounds me. There's nothing to fear, for I am safe with you. So when I fight, I'll fight on my knees with my hands lifted high. Oh God, the battle belongs to you, and every fear I lay at your feet. And I'll sing through the night. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. And if you are for me, who can be against me? For Jesus, there's nothing impossible for you.
When all I see are the ashes, you see the beauty. Oh, when all I see is a cross, God, you see the empty tomb.
Oh, so when I fight,
Nothing can stand against the power of our God.
Oh, an almighty fortress, you go before us. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. You shine in the shadows, you win every battle. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. Say it again. An almighty fortress, you go before us. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. You shine in the shadows, you win every battle. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. So when I'll fight on my knees with my hands lifted high. Oh God, battle belongs to you, and every fear I lay at your feet, and I'll sing through the night. Oh God, battle belongs to you, and oh God, battle belongs to you. Come out, it says, from wherever you've been. Come broken-hearted, let rescue begin. Come find your mercy, oh sinner, come near. Earth has no sorrow that heaven can heal. Earth has no sorrow that heaven can heal. So lay down your burdens, lay down your shame. All who are broken, lift up your face. No wanderer come. Oh, you're not too far. Lay down your hurt, lay down your heart. Come as you are. There's hope for the hopeless and all who went astray. Come sit at the table, come taste the grace. There's rest for the weary, rest that endures. Earth has no sorrow, heaven can cure. So lay down your burdens, lay down your shame. All who are broken, lift up your face. No wanderer come. Oh, you're not too far. So lay down your hurt, lay down your heart. Come as you are. Come as you are. Fall in His arms. Come as you are. There's joy in the morning. Oh, sinner, be still. Earth has no sorrow, heaven can't heal. Earth has no sorrow, heaven can't. So lay down your burdens, lay down your shame. So lay down your hurts, lay down your heart, come as you are. Come as you are. Come as you are. God, this morning we come to you as sinners. We come to you as broken. We come to you with pain, and we come to you with struggle and heartache and stress and anxiety and frustration. And we come to you with anger. We come to you with sadness. But God, you got it. Jesus, you have taken that. We don't need to do it. We don't need to struggle internally and fight ourselves, God, because you've got it. I just ask today, God, that you keep working miracles, that you keep changing lives, that you keep helping us who need it, which is everyone. God, you are all powerful, you are all knowing, you are all worthy of everything, God, and I just ask from the bottom of my heart that you continue to change hearts, to fix the broken, to navigate people who need it, to give hope to those who don't think they have it. And all you ask, God, is that we come to you as who we are, as people who need you. God, we worship you this morning. We love you. I ask that you stay. We worship you. We love you. We praise you. You are all worthy. Amen.
Good morning. Welcome to Hillcity Church. My name is Krista. If you are new here or newer to the church, you want to hear more about us or learn kind of why we do what we do, we have a welcome table in the back. There should be some people hanging out back there, or there's always people wandering around. You can always kind of ask. Well, we have a free gift if you're new to the church, and there's also a connection card if you want to get more information from us, kind of get your email in our system for any announcements or things that go out. If you call Hillcity your home and you want to give, we do have a box in the back. You can also, another great way is on the app, and then on the website you can give online, either recurrent giving or one-time giving. We have a prayer team here at Hillcity, and so we have these lovely prayer cards that are always in the back, so if you ever want to fill one out and put it in the offering box or give it to someone that looks like they know what they're talking about, that's a great way of doing it. You can also request prayer on the app, and then we have a prayer team that's always at the last couple songs on the side over here, so we'd love to be able to pray for you if you have anything you want prayer for. So you can connect with us a couple different ways. We have usually a lot of fun events going on, good things that are happening, and so following us on Facebook or Instagram is a really good way to find out just kind of last minute what's happening and any announcements. Also having our app, downloading that has the calendar of events, a lot of good information there. I think the sermons and the messages are always going to be like on Facebook and on the app as well, and that's a great thing to download if you haven't already. So a few things coming up here. So the marriage retreat is a month from now. That is, I think, November 18th to the 20th. That usually runs, it's a Thursday afternoon through a Saturday afternoon. And it's super fun. I've gone to several of those. Aaron does an awesome job about getting messages that are either kind of pre-recorded from some great teachers. He usually does a message himself. And it's also just really fun getting to know other couples in the church. Usually some fun games. And it's beautiful where it's going. It's up northern Wisconsin, and it's gorgeous. So you can register. I think there's a sign-up form online. It's $250 per couple. That includes like the room for the couple nights and the food. There's also scholarships available, so don't let cost be an issue to not go. Just let one of us know, and we can get that figured out for you. So youth group is every Wednesday night from 6th grade up to 12th grade. It runs from 4:30 until 8:30. There's always supper provided. And we can always use volunteers for youth group too. So if you're an adult and you want to volunteer, let Aaron know or Max know. Max is not here today either. He was already going to be out of town, but let one of them know if you want to volunteer or have any questions about youth group. So Aaron has an Ask Aaron that's online. You can submit questions. I think it's via, mail or email, or not, like, well, you can use snail mail if you want to, but if, mail, email, or on the app. But he does a weekly kind of a show, a podcast, a live thing that he answers any questions about faith or Christianity or anything about the sermon. So that's kind of a cool thing. Also, we have Dame's Makers Night. We don't have a slide for it right now. But this Friday, if anyone who's been in the women's kind of stuff here at Hillcity, we have this really fun thing that Kellen King, my sister-in-law, she's an art teacher for middle school. She's also a great artist herself. So if she can do like middle school art, like she has a patience of a saint. Like you don't have any art skills whatsoever, but she's awesome. So we're gonna do a maker night that's gonna be this Friday. It's at 6:30 at the Teens for Christ building. No cost, no nothing, just come, show up. There'll be some snacks and that kind of thing too, but it's gonna be, I think, a succulent paper, like kind of faux thing. I don't know, it's really cool. If you've ever been to those before, Kellen usually has like an actual fun, cool art project. So, and that's ages like 10 and up for girls, and it's a fun way to connect with people. So as we said, if you didn't hear when Jordan said ahead of time, but if you're kind of walked in a few minutes late, Aaron Stefan, our pastor, is not here this morning, kind of last minute, because last night his wife tested positive for COVID. She's doing fine, but of course they just need to not come to church. So he recorded his message last night, and I know they were really sad to not make it, but they're making all their plans they need to. So just keep them in your thoughts and prayers for both health and also just their sanity, because as you all know, they're involved in like a billion things. So if anything, they're really stressed about how do you reorganize all that. So keep them in your prayers. Thanks, guys.
Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to church. Welcome to the set of Ask Aaron here in my office, in my basement, at my house. If you haven't caught on, I'm not there yet. And I bet you can figure out why. Not too difficult. I'm feeling fine. Emily's under the weather, and we are relegated to our home. We thank you for your prayers and for reaching out. I have no idea when I will be back with you, but this gives me an awesome opportunity to let you know that every single Sunday you can ask Aaron questions by looking at that number on the slide or by texting the church number or my number if you've got it. And you can ask questions and I will answer them in video form just like this. Some of you have asked if you can reach out. Yes, you're free to reach out. You have asked if you can bring us dinner. You can't all bring us dinner. There's so many of you. But you can figure out with my mom. Ask my mom. She'll set it all up. I love to eat dinner. And so do the kids. And yeah, we're going to be home for a little bit here, but we're doing okay. We thank you for your prayers, and we thank you for understanding. I really hoped I would never have to record another video sermon, but here I am. And so if you're watching for the first time online, or this is your first time at Hillcity, I'm sorry I'm not there. I'm sorry this is your experience. We're all doing the best we can, aren't we? Hashtag 2021. But we have been going through a series of messages about being family, and oddly enough, today is the day where I talk about how family suffers with one another. And so we're going to jump into that. We've been talking about this idea that all of us have a need, a desire to belong to something bigger and better than ourselves. That from a very young age, I was a part of a church family that knew everything about each other, knew everything about me and my family, knew the good stuff and the bad stuff, and still we loved each other and supported each other through that. And eventually I wound up at a giant church across the river, and it was a great experience. I learned a ton of stuff, but it really struggled to make me feel like my family and I were a part of the church, like we belonged to the family of the church. And they tried as best they could, and it's a great church, but it really made me aware of the fact that God's intended plan for us is to be a part of something bigger, something better, a family unit. And whether that was a Cub Scout troop for you growing up, or a team that you were a part of, or a church that you went to, I think you experienced that. And the statistics and the data says that kids who grow up in a nuclear family with mom and dad and all of the support therein are way more likely to be successful, and that those single parents who are crushing it themselves are relying on communities of people who are helping raise their kids and bring them up in the way that we want them to go. And so I really believe in this idea of family and community, and I know that growing up you probably experienced something like that. And that's probably why you're in church this morning, or why you're watching online, is because you have that longing. You still have that need somewhere inside you. And you're hoping that by being a part of a church family, you can fill that need. And we hope to be the kind of church that helps to fill that need, because we believe that we are better together and that families are so important. And so this morning, we're going to talk about what it looks like for families to suffer. And before we jump into that, I've got a video clip here that I think is going to start us off with a little laughter, a little fun, because it's important as we talk about this really deep and sort of sorrowful subject that we experience a little bit of joy this morning. So let's go ahead and we'll roll that clip, and then I'll come back.
You're a believer in Jesus, man. Death should be a party. Death, where is that sting? I ain't afraid of death. Bring it. Not right now, but That's right, man. You're going to want to come to my funeral. I'm going to put the fun in funeral. It's going to be hard to be sad. I got a big bowl of candy on my chest. That is going to help some people, man. People walking by my casket, I can't believe you're gone. I can't believe... Smarties! Oh, my God. I love Smarties. Somebody takes 2 pieces, I grab their arm. Come on. Come to my funeral, man. There's gonna be dancing, man. I'm gonna have music and a DJ. Just throw your hands in the air and wave them like it ain't in there. Oh, come to my funeral, man. It's gonna be great. There's gonna be a mosh pit, man. And don't just let me lay there. Get me involved. Pick me up, let me crowd surf. Just... You're like, man, you go to Hawkins' funeral? Yeah, it was awesome!
Okay. Obviously, not every funeral is going to be fun, right? There's lots of stuff and horrible things that happen, and reasons that funerals are full of grief and sorrow and all sorts of really icky feelings. But it's not a surprise that everyone is going to go through a difficult time. Everybody loses someone. Everybody has a time of sickness or pain. We lose someone or something that we love. To quote the song, right, REM, everybody hurts. Should I sing it for everybody hurts sometime? No? Okay, I'll stop singing. The suffering is the same, but the reasons we suffer are different. And so it's important that as Christians and as families, we try to deal with these times of suffering. When stuff gets difficult, we try to deal with what's going on in our lives. We don't ignore it, we don't push it to the side, but we try to deal with it, and that we deal with it as a family. Because we know that suffering is coming. We know that it's inevitable, that someone in our family is going to die, or somebody's going to get sick, or somebody's going to have cancer, or somebody's going to be depressed or be anxious. We're going to talk about all of those things this morning. But we know it's coming, and so we need to have a plan for how are we going to deal with this suffering. What are we going to do when somebody in our family is suffering? And the Apostle Paul, who knows his share of suffering and understands what it looks like to suffer, he writes a response to this idea of suffering, potentially from a prison in Rome. As he's writing to Roman Christians and encouraging them, he wants them to know and understand that there is a plan for suffering in a way that Christians should suffer. And he tries to encourage them. But as we talked about last week, if you didn't see our message last week, it was about being weird and how Christians and Christian families and church families sometimes have to be weird and stand out and make people think they're strange. You know, even the idea of having a fun funeral might seem strange to someone who's not a Christian, who doesn't believe in life after death, because it's about the idea that we're going to spend eternity with Jesus, but not everybody gets that. And so Paul is writing to these Roman Christians, and he wants them to grasp the idea of what it looks like to suffer well and what possible benefits could come from that suffering. And so here's what he says. I'm going to read it, so now I'm going to be looking down. Don't, just hang with me. You can read it off your devices, follow along. It's actually going to be on the screens instead of my face, so you won't even be able to see. But here we go. Therefore, since we have been justified by faith, we have peace with God through Jesus Christ. And through him we have also obtained access by faith in the grace with which we stand, and we rejoice in hope for the glory of God. But we rejoice not just for hope, but also in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope, and hope will not put us to shame, because God's love has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit that he has given to us. And so Paul is saying, even suffering will eventually lead us to a place of hope. Even suffering should be something that we rejoice in, because we know that through our suffering, God is going to do something in us and through us. And so we as Christians this morning are asking this question: how should we deal with suffering? If we really want it to produce hope, if we really want it to increase our character, if we really want positive things to come from our sufferings, how should a Christian family, how should a church family deal with suffering? What does it mean for us to rejoice in our suffering? How can we suffer and rejoice at the same time? Does this mean that as we suffer, we shouldn't be sad? We shouldn't experience pain and grief and sorrow? How does God want Christians to deal with suffering amongst ourselves and with the world around us? And what is our modus operandi? What should we actually do when suffering happens? Because that's when we need the information, right? Is when we are in suffering, or when someone we know is in the midst of suffering, we need to know, what is it that we're supposed to do? And so this morning, I just want to take a look at three truths about suffering and about how God asks Christians and church families and the body of Christ, the family of Christ, to come together through this time of suffering. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, he's probably suffering. He's sitting in his basement. Well, truth be told, yes, I am not looking forward to spending, what could be a few weeks in my house without being able to see any of your beautiful faces or do anything. But I am preaching. I wanted to wear a hat to make you feel like it was normal. I am preaching, however, in sweatpants and slippers. So I am not suffering all that much right now. And just to reiterate, my wife is doing very well. She's got what amounts to a mild cold right now, and we're just thankful and hoping and praying that it stays that way. So anyway, the first thing I want to talk about, the first thing that Christians are supposed to do, the first thing that God says about suffering in his family is this: siblings should suffer with one another. Siblings should suffer with one another. God is very clear about the fact that we are better together, like I said, than we are apart. And it's why he places such a big emphasis on this idea of community. It's why we as a church place an emphasis on being together, and why it breaks my heart that I can't be there with you this morning, because being together helps us decrease all of the junk that comes with suffering. And that's a fact that's backed up by all the data and science in the whole world. When people are suffering, surrounding themselves with other people and someone who gets them and understands and knows what they're going through and have been through, that's the best medicine that people can have. It's why there are support groups. It's why counseling works. It's why sitting down and having meals with people and getting to know them and having them share their story is so effective. It's just that being together helps make suffering easier. It helps to lessen the load. And it's not surprising why that's the case, because when we share in one another's suffering, it spreads it out. It lessens our load. It's not up to just one person to carry on their own. And communal experiences can be and often are cathartic. I hear the introverts going, no, they're not cathartic. They make me stressed. But here's the reality. When you surround yourself, even as an introvert, with other introverts, and you're just in a room of people who are struggling and suffering, it makes it a little bit easier. It helps just to know that someone else understands and knows our pain, doesn't it? When you go through something and you know someone else has been through it or done it, it helps to know that they have felt the pain that you are feeling. And there is so much to say about this, but I just want to read you a couple verses that Paul writes to new Christians and to his friend Timothy about what it looks like for Christians to suffer together. He says this in Galatians chapter 6. He says, brothers, if anyone is caught in transgression, if anyone makes a mistake, you who are spiritual should restore them with a spirit of gentleness. You should surround them and be gentle with them, and keep watch over yourself, lest you too be tempted. And then he continues, he says this, bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. Bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. Because if anyone thinks he is something when he is nothing, he deceives himself. Bear each other's burdens and don't think of yourself as too high or better than the problems that somebody else is facing, but instead make yourself available to them. We're going to talk more about that in a minute, but he says, don't deceive yourself and think that you're too good or better than these problems, but instead get down there in the junk with them and help them as they walk through it. He writes to Timothy a little bit later and says this, you, my child, be strengthened by the grace that is in Christ Jesus, and that you have heard from me in the presence of many witnesses. And he says this, share in suffering as a good soldier of Jesus Christ. Both of these things, it says, bear each other's burdens and fulfill the law of Christ, and share in suffering as a good soldier of Christ. It doesn't leave any doubt that when someone is suffering, that you should be in the suffering with them, that is what makes you a good soldier, a good follower of Jesus, that when you are suffering with someone or alongside someone, you are fulfilling the law of Christ, the command of Christ, the call of Christ on our lives. And so we as Christians have a plan put out by God. His people are supposed to suffer in community, not in silence. We as Christians are supposed to call out to one another when we're struggling. He asks us to fulfill his law. His command is for us to suffer together. And so we're not supposed to be silent, but we're also not supposed to sit silently and watch as other people suffer, as other people go through the junk of life. We don't just sit there and go, oh, did you see that? Oh, that must be really hard. Yeah, well, they probably don't want to talk about it. They probably don't want to say anything. We're going to talk more about this in a little bit. But first, I want to show you another video here, an example of what it looks like for somebody to suffer and for other people to just kind of look and gawk. And I talked about this clip last week. It's a little bit weird. This proves to you that our church is still weird, Here's a clip, and at the end of it, I'll jump back in and tell you more about suffering. Okay, here we go.
If you're going to learn to be true dodgeballers, then you've got to learn the 5 Ds of dodgeball. Dodge, duck, dip, dive, and dodge. If you master the 5 Ds, no amount of balls on earth can hit you.
Yeah, shouldn't we, learn by dodging balls that are thrown at us, or...?
That's what this sack of wrenches is for. If you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball.
What?
Any other questions?
Okay.
And if you're going to lead this squad to the floor, you've got to learn to do the dance in the dark. Yeah, put that on. All right, ladies, buckle up. It's showtime. There you go. Dodge, duck, dip, dive. Dodge. Dive. Dip, dive. Come on! I get better runs than my shorts. Catch a ball, one of their guys goes out. One of our guys comes back in. That's the way you hurt them. That's the way you win. Let's go, a little hustle here.
See, here's the thing. Life is going to throw wrenches at you. It's going to cause you physical pain. It's going to cause you emotional pain. It's going to stink. It's to be expected. That's our second point about suffering. Suffering for the Christian is to be expected. It goes without saying that there is a lot of suffering in our world today, right? People are getting sick. People are being cast out of their countries or put in danger. There's all sorts of evil and bad stuff happening in our world, and a lot of it is brought on by our own actions, but much of it is also brought on by the actions of other people, right? Other people do bad stuff, and it causes us to suffer and to struggle. And right now, everyone in the whole world, you, me, everyone, wants to talk about the fact that the other people in our world, the ones with different views and different opinions, those people are causing you and me to suffer, right? Everybody has a view that says something like, oh, they're taking away my rights, they're putting me at risk, they don't understand what the real meaning of this word is or this study. How is our country supposed to function? Now, don't get me wrong. There is tons of stuff that we should stand up against. There is tons of evil in this world that we should stand up against. But I think the issue is that we've started labeling everything that's uncomfortable or everything that's, something that we disagree with, everything that we don't want to deal with, we've started labeling it as something we shouldn't have to deal with, right? Well, I shouldn't have to deal with that. I'm a such and such, or I shouldn't have to deal with that because those people should do their own thing and they should believe this instead of this. And we just say, if it's causing me discomfort, if it's causing me not to be able to live the life that I want, it shouldn't be. Well, that's not a biblical view, unfortunately. That's not what the Bible says, especially for Christians. The Bible says that the Christian should expect to suffer. And so the reality is that a Christian family, a church family, a group of Christians meeting together should expect to suffer, should expect to have bad stuff happen to them and come against them, and that we should almost wear it as a badge of honor because it means that we're doing Christianity right, that we are living that weird life that we talked about last week, that's drawing attention to the fact that we're different from everybody else and we are set apart from the culture and the society in which we lived. And if you don't believe me, just listen. 1 Peter chapter 4, we're going to start in verse 12. It says this: Beloved, do not be surprised at the fiery trial when it comes upon you to test you, as though something strange is happening to you. But rejoice as you share Christ's sufferings, that you might also rejoice when his glory is revealed. If you are insulted for the name of Christ, You are blessed because the Spirit of glory and of God rests on you. Don't suffer as a murderer or a thief or as an evildoer. But if anyone suffers as a Christian, let him not be ashamed, but let him glorify God because of it. Let those who suffer according to God's will entrust their souls to a faithful Creator while doing good. Peter says very clearly here, not only should you expect suffering, not only should you almost welcome suffering, but you are blessed when you experience it because it means you're doing Christianity right. And when you suffer, you should call out to God and say, thank you for this suffering because it proves that I am living the life that Jesus calls me to live, and that you entrust your soul to God, that you say, even as I suffer, God, I am giving myself over to you. I am letting you lead and guide me, even if you lead and guide me into the suffering, because I know that you're going to be there and guide me through it. I know you're going to get me to the other side. Paul writes to Timothy about this exact same idea. 2 Timothy chapter 3, we're going to start in verse 10. It says this, you, however, Timothy and his followers, you have followed my teaching, my conduct, my aim in life, my faith, my patience, my love, my steadfastness, and my persecutions and my sufferings that happened to me. Paul says, these things happened to me in Antioch, in Iconium, and in Lystra. And the persecutions that I endured, the Lord rescued me from all of them. Indeed, all who desire to live a godly life will be persecutors. And evil people and imposters will go and make your life bad and even worse, and they will deceive you and they will be deceived. But as for you, you should continue on what you have learned from Scripture, that you learned it as a child or you learned it as a child in the faith. You should continue to live the things that God teaches you in His Word, and you should not be deceived just to avoid suffering. You should live the life that God calls you to, and if you have to suffer, it's what's expected. It's what God set out for us to have to walk through, because the world doesn't follow Him and we do, and sometimes that's going to cause us to have to suffer. But as we follow God, God walks with us. Paul says, even as He walked through his time of trial and suffering in all these different places, he knew God was with him. He knew God walked alongside him. He knew people across, Asia and the entirety of Europe that he had been to were praying for him, and they were asking God to intercede on his behalf. And he says, I learned at a young Christian age, right? He became a Christian later in life, but he says, as a baby Christian, I learned the importance of following God even through suffering. And so as I did, God walked with me, and God taught me that I should expect suffering and that I can survive suffering and that I will come out the other side. Paul writes to the church in Philippi, and he encourages them with these words. It has been granted to you for the sake of Christ, you should not only believe in him, but suffer also for his sake. Such encouraging words from Paul, right? Not only should you believe in Jesus, but you should suffer for his sake. Peter and Paul don't usually agree. In fact, they disagree on quite a bit of stuff, but they do agree on this. For the Christian, suffering is to be expected. It's coming, and we need to be ready, and we need to embrace it. Life isn't just about our comfort. It should be about our commitment. Hear that. Life isn't about your comfort. It's about your commitment to following Jesus. And so while I've got you here, captive audience, and you're all thinking to yourselves, man, what an uplifting message. Well, I'll help you out a little bit here, okay? If we're going to suffer, and it sounds like we are, because we should, following Jesus means that we're going to have to suffer. And if we're supposed to do it together, because that's what Scripture teaches, we should try to figure out the best way to do it, don't you think? We should try to reduce the pain and the toll that the suffering takes on us, but we should also make sure that we're really helping other people through that process, because that's what suffering ultimately is, right? It's a process about walking through pain and and all of these bad things that happen. It's a process about trying to get either back to health or to our final timely end. And I think it's much healthier and much easier for all of us involved if we don't pretend that the suffering isn't happening, right? If we don't pretend that suffering isn't happening. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that like I said, I'm looking forward to the next 10 days or however many days I have to be in my house and around my kids and my family, and I can't visit any of you beautiful people. That's gonna stink. I'm not putting it out there like, oh, just I'm totally fine. And I'm not saying Emily's not sick. She's sick. She's suffering. We believe she's going to be fine and she's going to get well and everything's going to be okay. But she's suffering right now. And any of you who know my story or her story know that we've suffered in the past, right? Emily lost both of her parents within a year and a half of one another when she was very young, 22, 23 years old. And I've struggled with anxiety and post-traumatic stress and OCD for the majority of my adult life. And there's all sorts of, backstory and stuff. If you want to hear about it, send me a text. I'll fill you in on the whole thing. But we have experienced suffering and we're not afraid to talk about it. We're not afraid to share it, because this is my third thing about suffering. And to suffer as a Christian, right? To suffer as a Christian means removing the buffer between you and someone else, between you and other people, taking down the wall and stopping pretending. That's not how you say that. Stop pretending that everything's okay all the time. It is okay to not be okay. Somebody needs to hear that this morning. It is okay to not be okay. And you don't have to do it alone. Even Jesus didn't suffer alone. You want proof? John 11, verses 33 through 36. John writes a story about when he went with Jesus to see the sisters of Lazarus, who was one of Jesus's best friends, who had just died. And Lazarus' sisters are mad because Jesus didn't show up to heal him, and everybody's watching Jesus to see what's going to happen. And Jesus walks up and sees Mary and Martha, and Jesus sees them crying and their angst and their pain because they've lost their brother, and they don't know what's going to happen, and they don't know what to do. And this is what it says, what John records about what he saw Jesus going through and what Jesus did. It says this: when Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come with her also weeping, Jesus was deeply moved, and his spirit was greatly troubled. And he said to them, "Where have you laid him?" And they answered him, and they said, "Lord, come and see." And they took him to the tomb where Lazarus lay, and Lazarus was dead. He was very dead. And Jesus wept. And the very next verse says, "So the Jews said, 'See how he loved him.'" See how he loved him. They could tell that Jesus was suffering because he was crying, he was weeping, he was wailing at the loss of his friend. He was not afraid to express his emotion. And this is all over throughout Scripture. John records just one chapter later in the story that he writes about Jesus' life, about a time when Jesus is sharing with his disciples about the fact that he's going to die, that he's going to be crucified, and that they're going to have to deal with it, and that he's struggling with it because he's anxious about it. He doesn't know exactly what it's going to be like. He's fully human and fully God, and so he has to feel all of these things. And so John again writes down what Jesus says and experienced so that we could see that Jesus lowers the buffer and allows people into his suffering. John 12, verse 27 says this: Jesus said, "My soul is troubled, and what shall I say? Father, save me from this hour? But for this purpose I have come to this hour. And so, Father, I will glorify your name." Jesus says, what should I say? Should I ask God to save me from this thing that I have to do? No, I came to earth for this purpose, and so I'm going to follow what my Heavenly Father asks me to do. And it says, then a voice came from heaven and said, "I have glorified your name, and I will glorify it again." And a crowd that stood there heard everything that had happened and the voice that had thundered. And someone said, an angel has spoken to him. And Jesus said, no. The voice that came was from God, and it came for your sake, not for mine. The ruler of this world is going to cast out judgment. And when I am lifted up from the earth, I will draw all people to myself. And he said this to show the kind of death that he was going to die, that he would be lifted up on a cross, and that he would die, and that he would draw people to himself. In other words, that even in his suffering, even in his pain, even in his crucifixion, Jesus is drawing people and inviting people in and asking people to be a part of what is going on in his life. You know, when you and I suffer, or when we walk alongside someone who is suffering, we fulfill God's purpose and God's plan for us and for our family, for our church family. And that's why we at Hillcity and we as members of this community want to be the kind of church and the kind of family that brings, sure, we bring each other meals when somebody dies or when somebody is sick, right? That's great. And I will eat your food when you bring it to us. Trust me, I will eat it. But we also want to be the kind of family and the kind of church that shares openly and honestly about issues and suffering and pain and struggles and sickness, so that we can lean on each other and we can learn from each other with tangible examples and intangible and in spiritual ways throughout our lives, right? When stuff happens, we want to be open and transparent and authentic and honest about it, so that we can learn from each other and lean on each other, and we can be real with each other, and we can take down and remove the buffer and the barriers. You know, I'm just going to list off a few things here that people struggle with, and that all of us have struggled with from time to time, and that many of us try to pretend that we don't struggle with, because we want to, pretend like we've got it all together, or nothing bad happens in our lives, and we want people to think that we've got everything under control, but we really don't, right? Maybe you struggle with your kids. Maybe your kids are not believers, or maybe your kids are trouble at school, or maybe your kids struggle with sleep or sickness or whatever the case may be. And you just want to appear like you're a great parent, or you've, mastered the whole holding it together for the sake of the kids thing, but really you're struggling inside. I guarantee you there are other people in this church who are struggling with their children. And if we're just open and honest about it, we can walk alongside. If we just take down the buffer, we can walk alongside each other. Maybe you lost a job, or you're struggling in your job, or you don't know what you want to do for a job. I know for a fact that there are other people who have been through those same things. I lost a job once. It was horrible. Getting laid off stinks, and there's a harsher word for it that I'm not allowed to say in church. It's awful. But other people have been there and been through it, and will walk with you through yours. And maybe if you're honest about what you're going through, you'll find somebody who will help you find another job, right? Maybe your marriage is struggling, right? My marriage has struggled. Many people's marriages have struggled. And this is a perfect opportunity for me to tell you that November 18th through the 20th, you should come to the Hillcity Marriage Retreat, where we get real and deep and honest and authentic about the junk happening in our marriages. But you don't have to have the perfect marriage to be a Christian. In fact, you probably won't have the perfect marriage if you're a Christian, because spiritual warfare is a thing, and the enemy wants to attack your family. And that starts by attacking your marriage and bringing discord and disunity and disharmony to your family, so that you're not focused on God and what you can do for him, but you're focused instead on all the junk that's happening in your life. And so we as Christians struggle through our marriages together, so that we can impact each other's lives, and we can be there for each other, and we can pray for one another, and we can walk alongside helping, even restore marriages that have been broken through affairs or other things. We want to be there for people and help them to navigate those situations, so that on the other end, there is a testimony for what God can do through them and in their marriage, all right? Maybe you've been sick. Maybe you're struggling, with a diagnosis, if it's cancer, if it's, heart disease. I can't list all the things, right? We're struggling right now with COVID in our house. And there are people who have been through it, and there are people who are talking to me about what it's going to look like and what we're going to have to do and what the best plan is. And it is so comforting to know that there are people out there who care about us and who are walking us through. We have friends who are medical professionals who are giving us their advice, and we have friends who are not medical professionals who are giving us their advice. And the best part about this is that people have just been so helpful and open and honest and transparent, and it was so incredibly awesome to be surrounded by the people of God coming alongside. And if you're struggling with sickness this morning, don't hold that in and think you have to carry that yourself, right? And this doesn't just apply to like physical health, it also applies to mental health. And our church is such a huge proponent. I am a huge proponent of getting help for mental health. Go to counseling, join a support group, be a part, get marriage counseling, get personal counseling. I shared with you that I have struggled with anxiety much of my adult life, right? And it's too deep to go into. You can go back and look at other sermons about that, or you can talk to me sometime. I'm an open book when it comes to this kind of stuff. But here's my reality when it comes to my suffering with anxiety. I have had people that have walked alongside me and been there for me and pushed me and challenged me and supported me through the whole thing. But also, because I have been honest and open and real and authentic about it, so many of you have come to me and have shared with me, and I have been able to speak into your life, not from, my wonderful ways of Aaron's 10 ways to fix anxiety and depression. No, from my experience, I can say, yeah, that really stinks. That's really hard. And this is going to happen. And it's going to stink too. And you know what? Maybe counseling's going to fix this, but it's not going to fix this. And we're going to have to learn to deal with such and such for the rest of our lives. Many of you have been open with me. And because of what God has done in my life and just the grace he's given me and my own experiences, I have been able to encourage you or speak into your life. And none of those things would have been able to happen if you hadn't heard me share from my experience. And I wouldn't have gone to the people I had gone to if I hadn't heard them share their experience. It's about removing the buffer. It's about lowering your guard and being honest with each other. When you and I talk about what's going on and what's going wrong, we open the door to let other people know we've suffered or we're suffering, and we make ourselves really available to them to help them heal during their pain, right? To walk with them through it as someone who's been there and knows what they're going through and understands that pain and that sorrow and that suffering intimately. Some of you may have lost a child, right? A miscarriage or a child at a young age, and you know that only somebody who's been there and done that can know that pain intimately. Some of you struggle with infertility or, whatever the case may be, and you just want somebody who's been there, done that to walk through it with you. And so as someone who has been through stuff, I am open and honest about that stuff. As Christians, we should be open and honest about that stuff as we help others and we guide them through the process of healing or reaching that final destination, right? Even people who are sick and have a terminal illness can talk to other people who have walked alongside those who have that illness or others who have that same illness. And you can talk about the things that stink and the things that are hard. We can be together as we go through this suffering, right? We siblings, Christian brothers and sisters, suffer with one another. Suffering should be expected for the Christian and really for the whole world. And to suffer as a Christian means removing that buffer, right? Paul wrote to the Philippian church, I count everything as loss because of the surpassing worth of knowing Jesus. For his sake, I have suffered the loss of all things, and I count them as rubbish. Paul says, I have suffered the loss of so much in my life, and I count it as rubbish. And you know what? If you look it up, in the Greek, it's actually not rubbish. It's a naughty word. It's a bad word. He counts it as junk, as crap, as poopy. I said it. I could delete it. I'm not going to. In order that I might gain Christ and be found in him. Paul says, I count all of my suffering and everything that I've lost as trash so that I can know Christ and be found in him. I can be found in him through faith and the power of his resurrection. And I share in his suffering, becoming like him in his death. I put myself and my sinful ways to death so that I can be resurrected like he was. Jesus suffered for us. He shared with us his suffering. And so he asks us to do the same with him and for his family. But he doesn't ask us to do it alone. Paul writes to the Roman church, he says, the Holy Spirit himself bears witness with us that we are children of God. And if we are children of God, then we are heirs of God. And we are heirs with Christ, provided we suffer with him, so that we might also be glorified with him. I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing to the glory that will be revealed in us, because creation waits with eager longing for the revealing of the sons of God. Eventually, there will be no more suffering. There will be no more pain. Creation waits and eagerly longs for that day. But right now, this present time, these present sufferings are not worth comparing to the glory that will someday be revealed when we see Jesus face to face, right? So we need to just learn to get through the suffering of this present time with each other. We should expect it, and we should lower our guard, bring down the buffer, and do it together. So my question as we close this morning, and the worship team is going to come back up, and they're going to lead you in a couple songs, and I'm going to watch online, and I'm going to sing with you. But where are you on this journey? Do you know someone who's suffering, and you need to reach out to them? You should call them and offer to get together. Can you do more than just bring them a meal? And that's okay. Bringing a meal is a good thing, but can you do more than just bring them a meal or send them a card? Can you relate to their suffering in a personal way? And can you be there for them through theirs? Are you the one who's suffering this morning? Do you need help? Do you need to reach out, but you're too afraid to admit what's going on, or to admit your shortcomings, or to say to somebody, this is what's going on in my marriage or with my kids or in my life? Don't be afraid. Lower that guard and let somebody in this morning. Is there someone that you trust that you can open up to today? Do you need prayer? There are people who are going to pray for you on your left, my right. I say that every Sunday. Everyone in this family, this Christian family, this church family that we have, is going to suffer. We need to expect it. But we need to be ready to fulfill God's call, God's law in our lives. We need to do it together. And we need to do it with the right perspective in our hearts and our minds. And that perspective is this: we're going to suffer. So let's do it together. Let's lower our guards and do it well. And let's remember that ultimately the goal is to not be comfortable, but to be committed followers of Jesus. And that will someday bring us to a place where there is no more suffering, no more pain. So, would you stand and worship with us together as we sing these closing songs, whether online, in your living room like I'm going to, or there at church? Thank you so much for your prayers, and have a really great week.
There's a grace when the heart is under fire. Another way when the walls are closing in. When I look at the space between what I used to be and this reckoning, I know I will never be alone. It was another in the fire.
Standing next to me, it was another in the waters, holding back the seas. And should I ever need reminding how I've been set free, there is a cross that bears the burden, where another died for me. There is another in between what remains of me and this reckoning. Either way, I won't bow to the things of this world.
And I know I will never be alone. There is another in the fire, standing next to me. There is another in the waters, holding back the seas. And should I ever need reminding, what power set me free? There is a grave that holds nobody. Now that power lives in me. There is another in the fire. Oh, 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 I can see the light in the darkness as the darkness bows to him. I can hear the roar in the heavens as the space between west and I can feel the ground shake beneath us as the prison walls cave in. Nothing stands between us. Nothing stands between us. There is no other name but the name that is Jesus. He who was and still is and will be through it all. So come what may in the space between
All the things unseen and this reckoning.
I know I will
Never be alone.
I know I will never be alone. There is another in the fire, standing next to me. There'll be another in the waters, holding back the seas. And should I ever need reminding how good you've been to me, I'll count the joy come every battle, 'cause I know that's where you'll be. I can see the light in the darkness as the darkness bows to him. I can hear the roar in the heavens as the space between west and I can feel the ground shake beneath us as the prison walls cave in. Nothing stands between us. Nothing stands between us. There'll be another in the fire, standing next to me. There'll be another in the waters, holding back the seas. And should I ever need reminding, good you've been to me, I'll count the joy come every battle, 'cause I know that's where you'll be. Ramblers in the wilderness, so we can't find what we need. Got a little restless from the searching, get a little worn down in between. Bull chasing the matador, let the man left to his own schemes. Everybody needs someone face down in the desert now. There's a cage locked around my heart. I found a way to drop the keys where my failures were. Now my hands can't reach that far. And I ain't made for a rivalry. I could never take this world alone. I know that in my weakness I am strong. It's your love that brings me home. Brother, let me be your shelter. Never leave you all alone. And I can be the one you call when you're low. Brother, let me be your fortress when the night winds are driving on. Be the one to light the way, bring you home. And when you call and need me near, saying where you go, brother, I'm right here. And on those days when the sky begins to fall, you're the blood of my blood. We can get through it all. Brother, let me be your shelter. I'll never leave you all alone. I can be the one you call when you're low. Brother, let me be your fortress when the night winds are driving on. Be the one to light the way, bring you home. Brother, let me be your shelter. I'll never leave you all alone. And I can be the one you call when you're low. Brother, let me be your fortress when the night winds are driving on. Be the one to light the way when you're home. Be the one to light your way, bring you home.
Well, we did it. We just had a mega church video viewing. Right? It got so big that pastor can't even be here on a Sunday morning. In all seriousness, this service has meant a lot to me. I mean, everything like laid together perfectly. We don't have to do this alone. It would really, really suck if we tried. And it's not just, well, I'm going to pray and God's going to make me feel all right. He's just going to touch my heart and make me feel good. That's not what it is. When you ask for God's help, He puts people in your life. He brings those who struggled in the same way you did to help fix it with you. And unless we're there to listen to God, unless we're there connected with Him, we're not going to hear it. And then our friends that we love and care deeply about, they're not going to get the help they need. So that's why it is so important, not just for your own sake, but for all those you care about, that you search and you keep fighting and you keep looking and connect with God. I want to thank you guys for being here. I have no idea what next week's going to look like, but I appreciate that we're doing this all together. Because it's not easy, and getting a call last second about changing the entire worship set to something different is not fun for us, I don't think. But you know what? This has been one of the more powerful moments, honestly, that I've had at church in a long time. So, thank you guys for coming, and we'll see you next week.